Theory starts with a man saying that he was a slave-born imperial guard who died protecting the mad emperor who ended up making a pact with the demon. He wonders if he's going to be remembered as a knight who never abandoned his loyalty until the end, but perhaps as a foolish loser who failed to read the tides of time. In the end, neither sits well with him. We are introduced to Cain later, the imperial guard of the emperor. He says it would have been cleaner to vanish from everyone's memory, but we see a man asking why he turned his blade at the last moment, calling him an idiot. This is the rebel leader named Halo Reston. He calls Cain an idiot. Cain was born an orphan. He's lived for 29 years making his own choices, and he shouldn't start a fight for no reason. Halo says that he could have fled, asking why he made a choice like this. He starts crying, telling him to open his eyes, calling him a bastard and shaking him, but Cain's too far gone as the life in his eyes has already left. We see him walking in a watery afterlife. The sky looks like Van Gogh's painting, and he asks if this is what death is. He says that for freedom this isn't much at all, as it seems like he could be walking for eternity. Still, seeing Halo crying like that, it felt good to have someone care for him. But he says he'll manage on his own, and he decides to savor the so-called freedom. A blue aura starts to form in front of him. He turns, wondering what it is, as it flies directly into his eye. He's confused, and as if the painting was being washed away, he opens his eyes, seeing a man who looks very similar to Halo, saying that he was born healthy, calling him Karen. Cain's confused, and the man looks toward his father, asking if he'd like to hold him. The man picks him up, saying that he's not even crying, and he's a sturdy boy. Cain is still trying to think about what's going on, and the man tells him to grow strong and healthy, saying he can't wait to see what his youngest grandson does. Karen recognizes him as Halo, saying it is definitely him. He's just old and wrinkly now. Cain starts crying, and Halo says he didn't mean to make him cry. Cain tries to understand, asking if he really became Halo's grandson. It jumps to some time later, and we hear a man saying that the knight Cain later who met death alongside the emperor 45 years ago, though he could not stop his lord from straying onto a wrongful path, has come down to them as a symbol of unwavering loyalty, standing by his legion till the end. That concludes the latest opinion of their modern history society. He turns asking the young master what he thinks. We see Cain asking what his view of it is. The professor says he thinks the Grand Duke simply wished to restore his friend's honor. After all, the story that Duke Halo and Lord Cain were friends is well known. Cain asks if he really thinks that's the case, and the professor asks what he means. Cain says that he thinks his grandfather holds a grudge against his dead friend, and that's why he's deliberately gilding his name. He was reborn as Karen Reston, third son of Halo and the only child of Count Pale. The professor asks what he's talking about. Cain says that because his grandfather, rather than joining him on the road to revolution, can accept that regardless of Cain's will, which is to have a quiet death, not to be called a hero. The professor asks what he means by a quiet death, saying of course there are records that the duel between the two of them ended far too quickly for men of such skill, those only hearsay. If he supposes that Cain chose death instead of joining his friend in a fight to the death or in a revolution, it becomes reasonable. But he can't believe such a claim was made by a 10-year-old. Cain asks what he thinks. The professor says that if he agrees with that opinion, the Duke's knights might charge him with blasphemy and kill him. Hesitantly says a politically correct answer that he's never considered this perspective. Cain laughs, saying he's just kidding, asking why he looks rattled. He explains that right now his name is Karen, and as we can see, he's the youngest grandson of the Restukim for the time being. It took him a while to piece the situation together, but in the end he is now Halo's grandson, and he asks how dare that bastard make him a hero, saying that he should have understood even without him saying it. We see his father kneeling, and Cain introduces him as Pale, Halo's youngest son, and that he is his father. Cain clears his throat, and Pale asks if his lesson is over, and he says yes, asking if he was praying again, and if he's still worried about his awakening ceremony. His father is surprised he could tell and apologizes. Cain asks what he's sorry for, and his father says that unlike his two uncles, he never awakened magic power, so he worries he might have passed that down burden to him. Cain puts his hand on his father's shoulder and says no matter what anyone says, he's the greatest father to him. His father feels touched, hugs him saying he's the greatest son, and pinches his cheeks. He asks what he'd like for dinner, and of course Karen says meat. That night he's laying in bed throwing a rock into the air, thinking about the awakening ceremony. He remembers Halo talking to him about it, and how it's a family ritual to unlock an 8 magic power. Cain says that means it's something you're born with, like a silver spoon, and he couldn't care less. Halo tells him not everyone can awaken, and even if he does, it doesn't mean he qualifies to become head of the family. Besides, there's said to be a secret passed down only to the head. Cain, curious, asks what it is, if it's a treasure or a grimoire. Halo says if it's something like that, he might be interested. Cain says only a little, but he'd like to live quietly somewhere remote. Halo laughs, and Cain says if he's mocking his modest dream, reminding him he has a weapon in his hand. Halo says fine, when he becomes head, he'll tell you the secret. Cain says the ritual doesn't matter anymore. As he starts to release a blue aura, he tells his father not to worry, as he has already finished his awakening, and we learn it's been done for a while. The next day in town, his father asks him if he's amazed, and Karen says yes, as it's his first time on a train. His mother says much of the technology used was possible thanks to his father's sponsorship. Karen says he knew it, but Pale says his wife is just flattering him. She says that even if he says that, it's truly great, and he knows it. Karen says of course, and tells his father he's proud of him, and it's true. This man may not have awakened magic, but he alone supports 30% of the Duke's finances. With his kind mother and devoted father, he thinks they're perfect parents. They hop on the train and ride along the tracks. Karen looks out the window and spots the Reston family's main estate, the Osiris Fortress. There, he'll see his grandfather again, and also his old friend Halo. He smiles, saying he's made him a great figure of history, but he'll become the opposite, making sure all his worries are in vain, and that he'll become somebody unbefitting of the family name. His father also sees his aura after waking up. Cain tells his old friend to wait for him, as his precious grandson is coming. The train finally arrives at the station, and when they exit, an old man welcomes them, saying that he's finally arrived and it's been a while. Pale says that it's been around a year, asking if he's been well, and we learn that his name is Hinrich. He says thanks to the Duke's grace, he is always well. Karen asks if those knights are from the Sea Wave Knights, and they stare at him. He says that they've already noticed he has awakened his mana, and they're definitely different from the guys in their territory. Though it's expected for that to be the case, it's only a matter of time before Halo heard about it, but it's not like it matters. Hinrich says that he'll guide them to the main palace now, and Pale tells him to lead the way. Once they get inside, a woman tells Karen that the Count asked for him to wait here while he greets the family elders and call if he needs anything. He thanks her and says that this is just a reception room, but it's huge, and that the Osiris Fortress is really something else. He says that there's nothing to do here. Maybe I should have asked him to take me to the library. Someone laughs at him as he's looking out over the city, saying going to the library as soon as he arrives at the main house, just like the rumors say. He's a real bookworm. Karen turns, wondering who this kid is, and the kid says that since he's your uncle's kid, the chances of him awakening are slim, so he better hit the books. If he wants to make a crazy amount of money like the commoners, he should be just like his father, the barber up his hair. Karen starts to get pissed, and the kid, startled, asks what's wrong, and if he really wants to fight. He says he's going to use a little bit of his magic power to give you a preview. Karen glares, asking if there's a mad dog growing up in the main house. The kid starts to realize he might have picked a bad fight and says, no way. Realizing Karen is releasing his aura, he asks when he awakened, as his father never said anything about it. Karen says of course his father wouldn't have, as even his own father doesn't know yet. And more importantly, they have a problem. There's no need for two mad dogs in the same house. He'll be taking that role, and he tells him to step aside. The kid asks what he's talking about, and Karen says with that in mind, it's time for him to finally get a beating. The elders are having their meeting, talking about how Karen has awakened, and 3 captains of the Night Order already confirmed it when they accompanied him to the station. The elders of the Rest family discuss it, and the second young Master Ringo says that to think that he would awaken his magic power and even inform the main family. He wonders what Pale is plotting. Pale says of course not. He didn't even know. The first son tells Ringo to stop with baseless speculation, as Pale has an awakened magic power, so it's understandable he didn't notice. Ringo calls him pathetic. A man barges into the room telling Hinrich to come quickly. Hinrich asks what's wrong, and the guy is worried, wondering how to explain it. Even the 3 brothers wonder what's going on.
We see Ringo storming off behind the butler, and Pale says there must be a misunderstanding. Ringo's face fills with anger as he sees his son beaten up, sprawled on the couch. Karen goes to greet him, and Ringo picks him up by the collar, asking how dare he not know his manners, asking what the hell he was doing and what he was thinking by doing something like this. Pale tells him to stop, and Karen says it's simple why he did it. It's because Leo was insulting his father, and if it were his father, there's no way he would have just stood by. Ringo says he's spouting nonsense now, and Pale puts his hand on his shoulder, telling him that's enough. Ringo tells Pale to back off, saying it's all because of his poor upbringing that his son's acting out. Hinrich tells them all to stop, as the lord of the family said he will pass judgment himself. Pale grabs Karen, telling his brother if he didn't hear him and to let him go. He asks if he's okay, and Karen says he's fine. Hinrich says they should all go together, and Ringo still looks annoyed. Pale says they should get going as well, and Karen says yes, it's been a long time and he's finally going to meet Halo. Inside his study, Halo asks what the reason was for causing such a huge incident the moment he arrived. Pale goes to explain, but Halo says he wasn't asking him. He wants to hear the answer from his son directly. He knows Pale's not thoughtless enough to cause trouble, and that he's raised his son to not cause trouble without considering the consequences. So there must be a reason, and he wants to know every detail. Karen is surprised he'll hear him out before punishing him, saying acting so generous doesn't suit him, and he tells him it's because Leo insulted his father. Ringo asks him to tell the truth, and Halo slams the desk telling him to be quiet, asking how dare he raise his voice. Ringo apologizes. Halo says they can call for Leo and confirm the facts, asking Heinrich if Leo's treatment is finished. He says that it is, and he'll bring him at once. Halo says that's not the only thing he wanted to ask Karen. Karen says if he's asking about his magic power, he awakened it 3 years ago. Pale and his brothers are surprised, and Halo asks why he kept it hidden from his father until now. For him to do it on his own 3 years ago is crazy. Karen says he only realized it was magic power after reading a book later, and after he found out, he decided it was best to keep it secret. Halo asks why, and Karen says that having a secret is fun. And it was even more fun because the knights in his territory had no idea either. Halo asks if that's really all, and Karen says yes. The butler brings in Leo, bandaged up. Halo asks if it's true he insulted his uncle. Leo is hesitant to reply, and Karen puts on a scene saying that even though his cousin made fun of his father, despite that he should not have hit him, and he committed a sin. Leo says he never said this, but he has a PTSD attack of Karen's aura, so he gets terrified and goes along with it. Halo asks if it's really true, and Leo says yes. Halo says he sees. For now, since the awakening ceremony is tomorrow, he'll postpone the punishment of both until after it is over, and they should keep that in mind as they're dismissed. Halo then asks Heinrich what he thinks about Pale's son. He says he's not sure about other things, but he felt there were many aspects that would be interesting. Halo says he agrees. Not only did he awaken his magic power on his own, but he hid it until now. Furthermore, he seemed to be questioning the skill level of the knights assigned to his father's territory, as if subtly pointing out that by assigning such unskilled men, he was neglecting him. Hinrich says he's overthinking it, but Halo says he wishes that were the case. This child is different, and he'll find out what's special about him tomorrow. After all, they cannot know everything simply from the fact that he awakened his magic power. Whether he completes the awakening ceremony safely tomorrow, or if he doesn't, what he'll obtain there, he's extremely curious to find out. It takes us into the forest outside the city, and we see an altar. This must be where the ceremony will take place. The next day, at night, we see everybody in the family walking into the forest. Karen says the elders of the Reston family, although retired from active duty, he can sense that they are all incredibly skilled, and that Tails, the eldest son of Halo, and his daughter Leon are here, as well as Ringo and his second son Leo. For the whole family to be making such a fuss, it must be more important than he thought initially. They now stand before the altar, and Karen stares at it, asking if that is the Stone of Oath. Halo says it's time to begin, and that when he passes through the rift opened by the stone, beyond it a world the Stone of Oath shows him will unfold. They say that the world shown by the Stone of Oath is different for every person, and the ceremony will end when he uses the weapon he gets there to destroy the world. Karen says he's ready, and Halo just stares at him before deciding that it's time. He raises the amulet, wishing him good luck. As it starts to form a connection with the Stone of Oath, it unleashes a rift that looks as if the world they're in is some kind of simulation. The way it loads in, but time and space itself starts to rip apart. The pressure is enough to make them brace themselves for it. Halo asks him what he's doing and if he's scared. Pale asks if he's okay, and Karen says he'll be right back. He's supposed to use the weapon he gets from the world beyond to destroy it, and that'll be easy since destroying things was always his job. As he enters, Halo looks proud but warns him to overcome his fear. Karen enters the Matrix. The rest all stare, and when he is teleported inside, Karen is seen as the emperor of the empire he used to serve. During the day of the revolution,
Karen wonders why this is what he's seeing, and of all places, this is what came from his memories. It's trying to make him feel guilty by showing him his innocent comrades. As they get closer to the throne room, he hears a voice saying that his world is cruel and desolate, calling him the child of the blue wolves. They say that the time of the covenant has come, so they shall fulfill what was made with his ancestor. The door opens, and he asks if it's a demon. The voice continues, saying that the blood that flows in his veins cannot be invaded by a mere lowly demon, so he needs to overcome his fear and ascend to the throne. He pushes past the gates, and the voice says that what he desires is in here. When he enters, he says it's been a while, and it looks like there's something on the throne. A throne the emperor wanted to protect so much that he even made a deal with the demon. He didn't know that his comrades and he died because of that, and it feels like he's walking on their corpses just to reach here. The voice continues, saying that the child who received the blessings of the cold North Sea, though his soul has been lost, has finally arrived, and on behalf of the Blue Clan, it welcomes him. The sword that he used when he was Cain, the sword the emperor bestowed upon him, is here, a demonic sword called Ruin. The voice tells him to infuse his mana into it, and he says that's a demonic sword that eats the user's soul. The voice tells him that the evil thoughts that dwelt in it were extinguished by his grandfather, and what he's seeing is merely a distorted form placed by a demon. The voice tells him to awaken it once more, saying that only he can do it. He wonders if it's okay for him to touch it, saying he might return to his past self due to countless lives obeying the emperor's orders. He then recalls his grandfather's words, telling him to overcome his fear. Now he realizes what it is, saying he was being unusually kind. The true purpose of this ceremony isn't just to obtain a weapon, but for the heir who has awakened the Azor clarity to overcome the source of his fear. He grabs the sword, saying if that's the case, there's only one thing left to do. He starts to infuse his mana into it, and when he does, he's teleported to the depths of an ocean. He asks if this is the Azor clarity. The sword begins to change form from a demonic sword back to a normal one. He says he doesn't know why the sword met him in such a form, but that sword is the original sword of his progenitor. Rael, the sword his grandfather took, is also a progenitor sword. But unlike his grandfather's, the reason this sword was not even recorded in historical texts is because the power it possesses is extremely different from his family's. He starts to get overcome with the feeling of it. He sees it surging through his body, and when he comes to, he asks, "What is this?" The voice tells him to endure it, as the mana within the sword is being engraved into his body. He says the mana energy flowing into his body has become more intense, and for the sword to have such an effect, it's incredible. He asks the voice what the real name of the sword is. The voice tells him that it is a sword that has to be wielded against demons, devouring their powers, a sword that even demons feared, and that its existence was erased from their memory. A sword born from the deep sea of the north, a place dark yet pure. It is the execution sword, the guillotine. That is the true name of this blade. He stares down at it, and the voice continues, saying that it is a sword that resembles the deep sea's darkness and that it suits his destiny well. He asks who the voice is, saying that judging by the way they call themselves part of the clan, they must be the Blue Dragon, their family's guardian. The voice says that he doesn't have the name to handle their true name yet, and if he can one day dominate the sea with his power, then to come and find them in the North Sea. He thinks about it and seems annoyed, but then asks how he gets out of here. The voice says that he should already know, and he asks if it really is just as simple as breaking it. He says he's always wanted to try breaking the throne, and he starts to infuse his mana into the sword before swinging it down. Outside, the air is tense, and Halo can tell that Pale is worried. He tells him not to worry too much. Pale apologizes. Halo says that it must be painful to watch his son walk a path he's never been on, and he knows it's not easy, but that's all the more reason to compose himself. Pale smiles at his father's words before the Stone of Oath starts to open once more. But it's not only opening, it's starting to break.
Halo's surprised as he turns, and once more it starts to have that distorting effect as it pulsates through the forest and the altar itself begins to break. Halo asks what the hell is going on. Then Karen stands before them holding the blade, showing that he really came back. But where the stone went, they don't know. They're still trying to process what happened. Pale starts freaking out, asking what he's done by breaking the stone. Karen starts to get anxious as well. And Halo is surprised because he's staring at the weapon, saying that that's guillotine, and he recognizes it as the blade owned by their ancestor, Rael. It was erased from the family's history, passed down only orally to the head of the family and the elders. So why has it suddenly appeared now? He asked Halo if perhaps he's not afraid of the sword, but he wonders if the time of the covenant is approaching. Karen looks down at the blade and says that he isn't. Halo says that he sees, and long ago their ancestors who could not fulfill the covenant with the blue dragon to annihilate the demons left behind the stone of oath as proof of the covenant, vowing to the future, waiting for the day the one who would carry it out would appear. He wonders if maybe that means Karen is the one to succeed it. Halo raises his hand, declaring that Karen, son of Pale, is a rightful member of the fortress, a direct descendant chosen by the guillotine and worthy of inheriting the Spirit Sea style. Ringo, still pissed about his son's up haircut, says he can't believe a brat would be the one to receive it. Tails looks chill with it though, more curious about the blade itself, while Pale comforts Karen. Pale says he thought he knew every weapon handed down to their family, but he's never even heard of that sword, and just looking at it sends chills down his spine. He says he recognizes that Pale's son is walking a path he could never tread, but he will not let that sway the variable in their matter of success. Halo says the awakening ceremony is over and it's time to return. As they start to leave, Ringo yells at his brother, asking if he's going to stand by and watch. Tails tells him they'll have to speak privately soon, and says that even someone overflowing with greed beyond his abilities must be feeling this crisis. They ask if he knew about the sword, and Tails says he did not. Ringo says he cannot possibly understand the situation, wondering why it's Pale's son of all people. Pale says what matters now is that this is not the time to fight amongst ourselves. Back at the train station the next day, Pale asks Karen if he'll really be fine being left alone. Henrich asks if there is any place safer than their fortress. Pale says that's true, and it's safe from external threats, but what he worries about are the internal threats, meaning his brothers. But with his father there, he doubts they would act rashly. Henrich clears his throat, saying that the one assigned to conduct the Spirit Sea inheritance for the young lord is none other than Lady Sabina. Pale says he hasn't seen his aunt in a while, but if it's her, he can be at ease. Karen recognizes her name, saying that she is Halo's sister, known as a master no less skilled than Halo, and once called the White Wolf. Pale tells him that his aunt has always doted on him, so he should make sure not to show her any disrespect. Karen says he'll do his best, and Henrich says that he has a message from the family head, that he would prepare a residence for him in the fortress, so he may visit any time. Pale looks touched and starts crying, saying he's so grateful for his father. Thanks to that, he can leave without worry, and he thanks Henrich. Henrich tells him not to think anything of it. Pale tells him to take care, and if he ever needs help, to contact him. He heads back on the train, and Karen heads back up to the top of the fortress, looking down. Henrich tells him they should go, as Sabina is waiting. Karen says that's good, because he can't keep his aunt-grandmother waiting. Henrich says he wants to offer him a piece of advice, if he may. Karen says of course, and Henrich says that Sabina dislikes being called grandmother the most, and it would be best to refrain from using that term. Karen says he'll keep that in mind and thanks him for the advice, but wonders what's wrong with calling a grandmother a grandmother. They enter the fortress, and Henrich says that only direct descendants of the family may enter this cultivation chamber, and that Sabina is already inside, telling him to go in. Also, that Leo is here too. Karen says to be with Leo seems like it's going to be fun, and Henrich says that Leo specifically requested for Sabina. Karen says he'll be heading in then, and as he runs away, Henrich watches, saying that it will get lively again after a long time. Behind the door, he can sense the aura and says that he can tell it's serious in there. She yells, asking why he's standing outside and not entering. He enters, greeting her with a respectful gesture, and he's surprised. She asks if he's surprised that she doesn't look as expected, and we see that she looks way younger than Halo does. She says to think that he is Pale's son. Time sure does fly. He wonders if she reconstructed her body with magic, saying that that's the realm of an 8-star knight, but there's no way. She asked why he's standing there blankly, telling him to go sit in a cross-legged position next to Leo. This boy needs to fire his barber. Karen takes a seat, saying that it looks like they'll be seeing each other often and they should get along. Leo agrees, and Sabina says that she never thought she'd hear the title White Wolf from someone as young as him. He says that he likes history, so he read it in a book. She says he's just as interesting as her brother said. He asks if she can tell him what grandfather said about him. She says that he's someone she'll take a liking to, and now that she sees him for herself, she understands why he said that. There was actually more, though, and she says that he told her that he's a child who must navigate the vast ocean and she needs to help him so one day he may rule the sea. She should act like some sort of lighthouse. She says she's only seen him for a moment, but she can clearly tell that his potential is immense, rough, and endlessly vast, just like the open sea. She gets up off her seat, saying that it's time to begin and that the position they're in now is the most basic foundation for mana training. Once they pass the introductory stage, it becomes possible to do mana training without the position. She demonstrates it, saying that they'll be able to do it even in their sleep. This is the first time this kid's hairs look normal. Karen says that this is the Azora mana, and he recognizes it from the Oath Stone. She tells him that the sea domination technique is literally a method to rule the sea, and by using Azora mana, he creates and operates oceans within his body. Naturally, he becomes stronger by operating more oceans. When he can operate 8 oceans, he reaches the 8-star level. The stage where he can operate those 8 oceans as if they were one giant sea is the 9th star. And on the entire continent, only 3 have reached that level, and in the Empire, only 1. Karen says that it's his father, and she says that's correct. Karen is determined this time to reach where Halo is in this life. She can feel the desire coming off him and says that he's an interesting boy and he'll be fun to train. He decides it's time to start, and she says first that he should let the mana flow through the passages opened by the ritual, and remember that the power of the sea is not something to be controlled, but to be accepted. He starts to feel his mana, saying that it feels like rough waves and he needs to calm it down. He starts to focus it from his heart, and he looks much different than Leo in terms of how much mana he's producing. She notices this, asking if this is really the mana of a kid who just finished the awakening ritual. Even Leo, who's been taught the domination technique for the last 2 years, has only just begun aiming for the 2nd star level. In contrast, Karen is carving out his mana passages on his own, even though she hasn't taught him how yet. Karen says he feels a pain as if his body is being torn apart, and he starts to stop his training. She wonders if he's feeling the strain, saying it's good he can even control his pace. She looks over, noticing that Leo is tweaking off some fent, and she says she told him not to force himself to operate his mana. He apologizes, and she says, "I was so focused on Karen I forgot that even if they have awakened their mana, they're still just children," but just wonders why his hair is so up. That's why she needs to act like the adult to prevent them from harming their bodies. Karen calls him pathetic, saying it's impressive he managed to stop his own limits so he wouldn't strain his body. At such a young age, to have the composure to control himself despite his desire to grow stronger shows how bright her older brother was. But she doesn't think she'll need to act as his lighthouse. She walks over, calling out to him, saying that in 3 years she'll guarantee his safety, and he should focus on building the strength to protect himself. He says, okay, now it's time for practical training, so they head out to where all the other trainees are. Fantasy Saitama is training too! The instructor turns, seeing Leo and Karen walking in. Leo asks if he's really planning on using that sword for training. Karen says of course, as everyone kept saying its aura is menacing, so he's not even allowed to take it out of the scabbard. Leo says that's not what he's talking about. The instructor welcomes them both. Karen looks up to him, and the guy introduces himself, saying that today he will be in charge of his sword training, and he is the Knight Commander of the Seawolf Knights. His name is Zera's Winterguard, but he can just call him Sir Zeras. Karen says it's a pleasure to meet him, and he can tell at a glance that he's at 8-star level. Zera says that he may find this rude, but he will not be addressing them with the title of young master or anything, not until they are acknowledged. Karen says he shouldn't worry about it, as it's more comfortable for him actually, since he's not used to that title anyway. He's well aware that it's a Reston family tradition to earn the respect of the Blue Wolves by skill. Zera says that's a pretty interesting reaction, since most would find it disrespectful. Leo is no exception, and Leo just wonders why he's catching a stray. Karen stares at him, laughs, saying it won't matter as they will all bow before his feet.
Zera says that maybe a successor with a proper head on his shoulders has finally arrived, then wonders if maybe someone even worse has arrived and that he's definitely going to be worse than Leo has ever been. We get a whole 3-year time skip and Halo's drinking, but so is Sabina. She says that as expected, her brother's liquor is definitely the best, and Halo says it's about time she stops stealing his collection. He tells her to stop saying such disappointing things since she spent the whole 3 years teaching. He says these 3 years sure have flown by and asks what her impressions are of the boy after watching him so far. She says there's only one thought she's really had, and that the boy is a monster. Halo says she has some nerve calling his grandson a monster, and she says even the word genius could be an insult to him. Halo asks Zeros if he has the same thought. He says that if he may state his opinion after observing him for the last 3 years, he's of the same opinion as Sabina in every aspect, his physical abilities, talent, attitude, will towards training, as well as the fact that he feels superior when compared to the first grand heir who is rumored to be a genius. Halo asks if he's really comparable to Hugo, saying that a talent greater than him would be crazy since he's said to be the best in the Empire. Zero says that's what he believes. Sabina says this will cause trouble for the family if not managed properly, and Halo asks what she's talking about. She says that he needs to think about the influence Karen will have on the line of succession and what he'll mean to his sons. He asks if she's suggesting that her sons could become a threat to their own nephew. She says he may have it under strict control now, but if his outstanding talent becomes known throughout the Empire, it will influence who succeeds him and what will happen after. Halo realized that she's right. She sighs, saying that now that the Stone of Oath has been broken, their family might be finished, since the number of magical beasts crossing over from beyond the North Sea has sharply increased. He tells her to stop saying such absurd things. The one who broke it will raise a new one just as their founding ancestor raised the stone long ago. She says that's the first time she's heard of it, asking if it's a prophecy passed down only to the family head. He says yes, it means the time of the covenant is imminent. She says it seems the shoulders of their cute youngest will become very heavy, asking when he's going to tell Karen. Halo says he'll do it when the time is right. Karen's writing a letter to his father asking if he's well. He says first he has to apologize for not being able to visit, as he's engrossed with training. The weather is getting colder, and since his father is sensitive to the cold, he should dress warmly. He says that he recently mastered the 4th stance of the J-style and the 4th form of the harangue swordsmanship. As instructed, he's trying his best to get along with the relatives, and he's taking good care of Leo. He tells his father that he has a favor to ask, saying that he's run out of allowance, asking for some money. P.S. that he needs to send over a good barber for Leo. His father laughs, asking Henrich if he remembers how anxious he was when he first left him in the fortress 3 years ago, but to think he'd adapt so well is surprising. Henrik says that these days the fortress is never quiet thanks to the young grand. Pale says he's heard many times that it's not good to stand out, and Henrik says a jewel shines even when it's still. He says that's true, and Henrik says the situation may change from now on, and it may become impossible to prevent information about him from spreading outside the fortress. Pale asks if he's trying to say that he might be assigned on a mission soon. Henrik says that is correct, and he must accomplish the task given by the Blue Wolves. Pale says he knows, but what worries him is that his 2 older brothers will not be pleased with his son's growing influence. Henrik says there's only one thing he can say, that Sabina is extremely fond of Karen. Pale realizes that with his aunt there, it will be hard for them to do anything, and says that Karen has told him in his letters these past 3 years how much she cares for him, but he's reassured to hear it from Henrich. Henrik says that Sabina has always been fond of Pale too. He says it seems the allowance he's been sending every month has paid off, and Henrik laughs, saying that since he's able to make jokes, it seems his worries are being eased. Pale says that his aunt is also scheduled to leave the fortress soon though. Henrik says he believes he doesn't need to worry about that either, because Karen has formed a strong bond with the Knights of the Fortress. It's an irreverent title, but not to the point where the Knights have personally given him a nickname. Pale laughs, saying that he's heard of that nickname as well, and he's called the Young Mad Dog of the Azor Sea Fortress. We see one of the Knights fighting, and it's none other than Karen, who shatters his own blade. The guy tells him to stop as he's already lost, asking how he could just twist the path of his sword and take the hit. We learn the man's name is Hans. Karen says that he must know how the harangue sword is useless if he's overpowered, so he estimates strength with strength, and a grown adult like him can't be this weak. Hans says that he's probably the only one who would criticize his strength, and Karen says your muscles are just for show. Hans says it's the first time he's ever been told that too, and Karen says he's only being honest. Then he says that now he finds it overwhelming to face him without using magic, and it wasn't this bad just last year. It looks like he might be deployed on a mission soon. Karen asks Leo if he heard what they said about being deployed on a mission. Awful Haircuts says that he doesn't want to be deployed on the same mission as Karen, and the man he's fighting tells him to focus on his match. Leo apologizes, saying that a mission is still a mission, and if he completes it, perhaps his mother and father will be pleased. Back to Pale, he tells Hendrich the reason he asked him to come in person was not because of the letters. Hendrich asks what the matter is, and Pale tells him to take a look at this. The thieves' inspectors discovered it in a merchant wagon coming from the Aberney of Bellies. He puts his fingers in it, asking if this is what he thinks it is. Pale says it is. It's a narcotic called cocaine, and he needs him to investigate the Aberney of Bellies from here in the fortress. Hendrich raises it to his nose, getting a whiplash from when he was a coke fiend in his younger days. We see a train arriving, and a man exits, asking if this place is the Azor Sea Fortress. Elsewhere that night at the castle, we see some guards patrolling, and Karen looks like he's trying to sneak out. He says it's always a thrill to mess with Zero's collection, and just because he's in a kid's body doesn't mean he's forgotten the taste of liquor. Then he spots 2 people, and he asks one of them, or as he's never seen them before. The guy is asking one of the butlers if it's true that the Duke is absent, as this is an urgent matter. The butler says he's gone to the capital to have an audience with His Majesty, and for now the Knight Commander is acting. Karen calls out to them, and the butler is surprised to see him. Karen asks what brings him this late at night, and the man says this is Baron Roe, Han of House Bellies, and he has an urgent request. Karen stares at him, and Rowan says if he's the young duke, that would make him the son of the 3rd prince who was pushed out of succession. Unlike his father, he's heard he awakened to magic and is training at the main house. He tells him it's an honor to meet him and introduces himself, but Karen says he'll hear him out. The butler says it would be better to send him to the Knight Commander, but Rowan just wonders why the hell he's holding a bottle of liquor. Karen says that normally he eats in proxy, but if he came in person, that means it's urgent, and it's only proper that a noble be the one to receive him. The butler says he'll go and inform Zero separately, and Karen says that's good. Rowan just hopes he's not a troublemaker, thinking his political judgment is impressive, but that liquor bottle still bothers him.
Karen says, is the rest of family always like this, drinking at such a young age? Karen asks if the problem is the bandit group settled in the eastern mountains of the Baron. Rowan says that's correct, and Karen says, ever since the bandits appeared, suddenly drugs are circulating and commoners are being kidnapped and sold as slaves. Rowan says, yes, it's shameful, but our barony has poor barren land and no specialties. For a whole year, they haven't even had a proper military, so they couldn't respond. Unable to bear it, my father led what little soldiers they had to attack the bandits, but instead they suffered heavy losses, and my father has been bedridden due to the battle. Because of my incompetence, both my father and the people are suffering. Karen puts the liquor bottle down, saying that bastards like that deserve to be ripped apart and killed. But there are also things that don't make sense. Even if his military power is weak, for bandits to stand up to a regular army is strange. Rowan says it's not confirmed, but we suspect they have deserters from the southern kingdom that's at war. Karen thinks about it, saying that he's heard ever since the dethronement of the evil emperor, the imperial army, which was downsized, has been focused on the south because of the war. With no room to spare for the north, it's natural that holes in public order would appear. And indeed, the theory of the deserters becoming bandits seems plausible. He then says that the mood isn't light and asks if he wants a drink. Laughing, Karen says he may not know this, but the Bendy's barony borders the territory where his father lives, and from his position, this isn't something he can overlook. If possible, he'd like to personally help. Rowan thanks him, but wonders if it's really okay to drink liquor given by a child. Karen says this liquor was swiped from Zera's collection, so it must be kept secret.
Rohan says Xeris is the knight commander, though, and Xeris enters, saying that they both agree he would stop touching his liquor. Rohan is startled, and Xeris apologizes, saying that he's been discourteous. Xeris says there's no way the young baron could have known, so he shouldn't trouble himself. He's heard about the bandits troubling his barony. Rohan says that's right, and that's why he's come to the fortress to see if the knights might come. Xeris agrees, saying the matter is pressing, and Karen just laughs. Xeris tells him alcohol is not good for his age and snatches the cup away. Karen says to give him back his liquor, and Xeris says he's sorry he's seen such an unsightly scene. Rohan tells him it's fine, and Xeris says that since he's come to them, they will not sit idle in the face of an old companion's hardship. Rohan says that's welcome news, and Xeris says they'll soon organize troops to dispatch, so he shouldn't worry. Rohan says he's relieved that he can bring good news to his people. Karen says that he'd like to go. Xeris says that won't do as the enemy is trained, and who knows what experts may be among them. Rohan asks if this kid was serious about wanting to help, since he may be training at the main house, but he looks no more than 12 or 13. Xeris says that in just 3 years, he's raised his magic to the 4th star realm and advanced to the 4th form of their swordsmanship. But real battle is different. Karen says that overprotection is not good, and he'd rather be sent west because a visible danger is better than an unseen one. Xeris says he has no intention of letting him risk fighting enemies whose size, strength, and base are unknown. Karen then says that he'll make him an offer he can't refuse. Rohan and Xeris wonder what it is. Coconut Head asks why he's here, and Karen says this is exciting, since it's their first mission. Xeris says that he's been had to think that he would bring Sabina forward. She says that 2 of them are so cute. Xeris says it might be a good thing, since it means a reliable guardian will accompany them. She too once got excited about her first mission. Xeris says that seeing he accepted on the condition Leo goes along must mean that she's satisfied with her training. Rohan says that for them to have the legendary White Wolf here is crazy, and he wonders if it'll really be okay though with just 2 brats. And if anything happens to the Duke's grandson, his house may be held responsible. Xeris tells him not to worry because the things the young baron fear will not come to pass. Rohan asks if it was that obvious, and Xeris says that with Sabina with them, nothing will befall the 2 of them. Sabina then says that unless the 2 kids are in mortal danger, she doesn't plan on stepping in. Both Leo and Rohan look like that's awful news, and Zara says he knows she trusts in their growth, but still that's too much. She says he knows it's more than just that. There's a reason she mustn't step out to the front. He says he understands, and if that's truly her will, he'll accept it. The train signals it's ready to leave, and she says that time is up. Leo starts to weaken because his hairline's cooked, and Sabina says that's only natural for him to feel nervous, but still he should think of it as his chance to prove how hard he has worked for the last 3 years. It's a chance to be recognized as a member of the Blue Wolves. He says that she's right, and Karen asks if he always needs someone to push him from behind. Leo tells him to shut up and they hop on the train. Karen says he needs to find their spot. Leo says he knew this would happen, that there would be a time he'd have to prove himself. The train, now departing through Bellies, leaves, and Leo says he never thought it would come this soon. It turns out that it's confidential that she's even here in the fortress, which means she can't publicly step forward.
The moment her presence is known, the bandits will vanish without a trace. And surely Rohan wouldn't want that either. He says that he doesn't, but he wonders if it's really okay to entrust it to just these 2 children, since one doesn't even know the meaning of the word nervous, and he thought this was his first mission. The other one just worries me so much because his haircut is awful. And he can tell Leo is very lost in thought right now. Leo is just thinking about his mother, recalling her asking if he even knows how to think, asking how he can get along with that boy. Karen, asking if he's forgotten what happened 3 years ago, that he should remember well that he's not his friend but his rival, that he was disgraced by him and tarnished his father's reputation, yet he still laughs and jokes with him as if nothing happened. He must not even have a brain in his head. And if he has a tongue, then he should say something back. He needs to be a man. Leo says that he's sorry, but they are not rivals. Even brother Hugo, the so-called genius, didn't reach 3 stars until he was 14. Karen reached it at only 13. And compared to that, he only managed to reach 3 stars this year at 15. Surely she can see the difference herself. And that Karen may be his goal, but he can never be his rival. She says that he must cast aside that inferiority complex. And he says that's not what this is. Karen's existence is the driving force that pushes me to work harder and move forward on my own. She says your eyes show that you're really blind, that you're staring at the trees but not seeing the forest. Zabina calls out to him, snapping him out of it. She asks if it's that hard for him to shake off his nerves. He says that it is. And she says it's understandable since this is his first mission, asking if he'll be able to bring himself to cut someone down. Karen is the kind of boy who would sell him off if it meant saving his own skin. But she knows Leo's not the same. And he doesn't need to doubt himself anymore. She knows better than anyone how hard he has worked for the last 3 years. After all, she was the one who trained him. He says that she's right, calling her master. And she says that has a nice ring to it. We have 20 minutes until we arrive in the territory. Zabina says for this mission, they should address each other as master and disciple. He agrees. And Rohan asks where she's going. She says that if she appears at the station, word will spread instantly. So she needs to move out first. He says the train is still moving, though. He keeps calling her the White Wolf, so she corrects him, saying to just call her Lady Sabina. Karen says she's as bold as ever. And she says that her grandnephews will be watching close by, so he doesn't need to worry. She hops out the window. He yells after her, and Karen just laughs. Rohan and Leo both wonder why everybody in the Reston family is like this. We see an old man coughing, and this is Rohan's father, saying that his body is not in the best shape, so he hopes they'll forgive him for receiving the young wolves of Reston while sitting down. Karen says that he shouldn't mention it, asking how his wounds are. He says that he's past the point of danger, so he appreciates their concern. And he doesn't know if Karen remembers, but he once met him and his father 10 years ago. He says he's grown splendidly. Karen says he should speak casually, as he's not well versed in etiquette, and it only makes him uncomfortable. Rohan says that even if he's uncomfortable, young lord at least. Karen says to put it more at ease. The Baron says that if he's already on his first mission, let him see that he's reached the 4th star at such a young age. Karen says that his cousin Leo is stars, though, and Leo wonders why he's catching another stray. Karen is surprised that since the Baron's not a warrior, yet he knows quite a lot. The Baron says that even if he's not, for him to be dispatched means he's thought of very highly. And because of that, he hesitates to assign such a dangerous task to promising young men. Karen says he understands his concerns, but if they fail their mission, it would disgrace the proud honor of the Blue Wolves. And they have no intention of failing that. He asks Leo if he agrees, saying they'll see it through without fail. The Baron laughs. Thank you, then begins coughing. Rohan asks if he's okay, and Karen says he is, so they should leave. He says he'll entrust it to them. The guide has been prepared, so just follow. Karen says okay, and as they're heading out, Leo calls to him. Karen asks if he's tired already. He says that's not what he means, but he wants to know if we can trust this so-called herbalist. Even if he's a skilled local guide, there's no guarantee he isn't in league with the bandits. Karen asks if he's finally starting to use his brain, saying that he definitely is part of the crew. He asks how he knows. And Karen says because of the talk he had with Rohan when they first arrived at the station. He asked him how they planned to track down the bandits' hideout, and Rohan said that he sadly had no choice but to make use of a traitor from within their territory. Karen thought that was a good method, and he informs Leo that's the gist of it. Leo asks why he didn't tell him earlier. And Karen says because he was wound up in his nerves all day.
Leo says still to think he would knowingly stick with a traitor, he sure is cunning. Karen says exactly. The fact that he hasn't been punished all this time shows as much, but it also shows how desperate they are, which is why they're the bait now. Noble sons traveling through the barony towards a neighboring domain. The perfect setup. Looks like they're about to reel them in. As the herbalist turns with the bandits behind him, saying this is good, and that he's added a little more than promise since they're nobles. The bald guy says that these young masters don't look like they'll come quietly. Karen instantly draws his blade, saying that vermin like them should not dare spread narcotics in his father's territory. At the Belly's barony, the Baron is still coughing. Rohan asks his father if he's all right, and he says that he is. Rohan walks over, handing him some water, and the Baron thanks him. Rohan just looks worried, asking if he thinks the two young dukes will be okay. His father says that to dispatch the two boys to their domain without any proper information on the bandits must be taken as a sign of how confident they are in the boys' skills. Besides, that boy named Karen reminds him of the young duke. Not just his appearance, but his confident demeanor and relaxed attitude. He believes it will be all right to have expectations of the two boys.